Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. I'm going to continue filming some of this because so many of you, asked for it. So what I have here, this is we're developing this elk, and I had showed you last time in there that I'm going to be painting him. Now he's not completely done. I'm painting him into this scene, and I have a lot going on in the scene that I'm going to do here. So this is just basically the concept idea of it. This is nothing done in here whatsoever. I'm going to be changing a lot of this all in through here, and he's going to get painted. So I'm just going to show you, some of the major elements. I did mention last time I'm going to have to change the light source on these mountains. I'm going to show you in another video. I don't think I'll get to it today, but in another video, how to quickly change that, because I got to go pick up my grandkids in about a little over an hour. So I'm just going to try to film this real quick. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to put some movement in. Now, several years ago, and we'll put it up on the screen. Several years ago, I painted this one right here, and I'm not completely done with it. I decided I need to add some more to that cow elk over onto the left side, and maybe change just a bit of the mountains. I like to look at it though for quite a long time. But I like the bull elk, and I like the water and stuff that comes down into the front of the design, and some of the movement, a little bit of the snow. It just adds a lot of elements into the painting that I like. And I've painted a lot and several with you of the elk and deer, whitetail, and some of the different things into scenes. And I sell a lot of commissions of those. But I want to bring some of that down in here, and the concept of water. And usually what I do when I'm creating this, I'm not adding working from a photo, an exact photo. I'm creating a scene. I go out and find this. Now, this is up in the Rocky Mountain State Park, and I'll put this reference photo in for everyone to use as well. But it shows a good little stream and mountains into the back, and it has a few rocks in here. Now, I really like the one that I did with the elk. Many times as artists, we enhance those light and shadows, especially up into the foreground, so we get some more interest there, and that's what you got to look at. So, it's nice to get conceptual ideas from some of these kinds of photos. Where the light, where do you see blue? Where do you see the reflection of the sky? And here has a lot of moving water in it. And when you have a lot of moving water in it, you don't get a lot of water clarity to it. So, but like on the one that I did with the elk, you get a lot of clarity to it up in the front because I only put a little bit of moving water. Here's one where you don't have hardly any moving water through here, and the angle here is looking down more than that other one looking at the side. When you're down more, you don't get as much of a light. You can see a little bit of the reflection of the sky right up in here, but you see a lot of the rocks and the movements, and those are actually a lot of people think that they're very hard. No, and I did for a long time. They're not hard to paint. And so I think I'm going to add some of that right in here. I think I'm going to put some moving water and maybe some of that calmer water down here with a few rocks. Really make an interesting composition. It's going to take me a while. I'm going to work on this painting a little bit more than I do most paintings. And I think I'll take you guys along every once in a while on this little journey with me. We'll paint other things. I'll put up other videos for you, those that want the florals and stuff. But let's get into this one. Okay, so I want to kind of emulate that light color that's in the back. I got that right down through here. And so I want to get some of my darks. Now, these are the Heritage Multimedia colors that I have. And again, the full list is in the video description. That we put right with each video. You can see the colors that I'm working with. Let's take some of our phthalo and our burnt sienna. The burnt sienna is going to gray it down a bit, which is what I want. And I have just a little bit of extender out on the thing on the palette there, and I put just a light coating of the extender. And those you need, this is the Heritage Extender Medium. And what I want this to do is I just want to put in some color here. And when I make my first strike of color, you see where you see a little bit of that burnt sienna? That's what I like to see. And so it shows that I don't have quite enough. I want to see this light, this kind of look where you get that modeling through here. See, so you don't mix it up on your palette. You get this modeling of color through here. of light and dark and burnt sienna, because that's going to help us as we put on some of this forward water. That's going to help us with interest. So we take a little bit of the phthalo, a little bit of the burnt sienna. Don't mix it up real well. Just kind of tap them and model them together so they come off differently here. And we'll fill in some of this. This is my 1-inch brush. I like to use that. Sometimes when I'm doing big areas, I go to my 2-inch real quick and I'll pull that in. But I don't want to, and see, just pull down slightly, and that gives that calming, reflecting effect to the water, which we always talk about. You pull side to side to get movement, and you pull up and down to get that calming, reflecting part there. Sorry, Dirk, I'm going to cover this just a bit in here, but I'll bring that back for you. But that's a side joke here. So we'll continue on right down through here, a little bit of that. So this sets up, you know, the best way, everyone, is when you're starting a painting like this, and even when I'm doing all of this block in, see, I'm painting for light and dark and interest and this movement. See that movement that's in there? That is what's going to be the most important. Now, we can take a little bit more light color here. We can lighten this just a bit here. And we can take some of that right up to here. Now, I have to go, like I say, that sky up there, I have pretty violet. So let's get this a little bit more light and a little bit more violet. And let's just bring some of this. See, this is all, and I like to, with that, and see how I just use that paper towel. I soften off those edges, and I'll take this right into the grass and then right back out. But I like to paint over things several times. I don't paint around things, I paint over things. So this is going to give us just real soft right in here some of the idea of the waters and the reflections. We're going to have to reflect those trees and stuff down there, but we can do that again. But that's going to give a little bit of the idea of the water. And see, it's not a perfect part of the painting, and I don't do that. I don't go in there immediately try to paint something perfect. I go there immediately, try to set up a light and a dark and a little bit of color interest. And then you're going to go back and refine it. It's so easy to get trapped into this, oh, I got to do it right away and it's got to be perfect. And you work back and forth, and you'll work so much in there that you'll destroy all the possibilities of the painting. Does that make sense? And if I was going to say to you one thing, guys, don't destroy the possibilities. Don't go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Each time you do that, you're softening it out and taking away the possibilities. So you want to get it on as quickly as you can and still leave as many possibilities as possible. So let's take some green, some burnt sienna here, pine green, burnt sienna, some yellow oxide. Again, don't go too much here. And let's just take some of that right into here and restate some of our foreground right up in here on this side. A little more green, a little more yellow. We have to decide just how much our light source is going to come out over here. So that's all into the future of our painting here. But we'll get rid of that little light spaces right there. Don't destroy all we did before. And we're probably going to have some grasses and stuff coming right down here into the water. So what I want to do, I don't want to make a defined edge with that water. Okay, so I don't want to make a defined edge. We'll do that later. Right now, we keep those possibilities open. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're keeping some of those possibilities. And that's a little light, but that's okay. And I'll maybe create some smaller verticals. So when I paint landscapes, I'm a big advocate of verticals and horizontals. And watching those, because they create the movement of the landscape there, okay? And so we'll push some of that in. And I just love this kind of stuff. I'm going to go to a smaller brush and just show you. See, you can cut right in here just like that. See how you get that little granulated edge? What I do is I take my brush, tap it through the light, tap it through some of those colors here, okay? and I go up right up over the ferrule like that. Okay, so it's right up over the ferrule, and then I hold that down, and then I'll pull that horizontal. Sometimes I'll roll it up onto an edge and push it down and roll it a bit, and I'll get a different mark. And so that can kind of set up the edge there of that back grassy plain there. See, and we can set up some other edges, maybe a few more little verticals here, and that will look like grasses. Not a tremendous amount, because we've got a long ways to go here really into the painting. I've got a lot of things I'm going to really paint into this one and show you guys some different tricks and stuff that we have here. All right, so that sets that. See, but if I wanted to, we just take a little more light. See, if I wanted to really create an edge, see, I can use that edge right there like that to really create a nicer edge to the water there if I wanted. But I'm not there yet. Now, what I could do, since water is based on a whole lot of reflections, is I could take some of this feeling of this water and grass here, just pull some of that right in here, especially, and this is what you do. You don't have to be perfect with it. Reflections are normally a little bit darker than what the actual water is. So if I get something a little lighter, I just go back and tap up here a bit. But they don't have to be absolutely perfect. They just have to emulate it. So you can put in some of those colors and then just take a lighter, bigger brush like this and just pull down like that. So these are with the acrylics, and see that extender just makes it stay wet for a little while longer. And pulling down like that, I can give some indication. I dropped my brush. Sorry, I dropped my brush. But give some indication of that reflection that's there. Now, I may destroy that later on when I put in the movement of water, because I'm not sure exactly yet how much movement of the water I want to put in. But let's go put that in. And you'll notice, see how this dark here really made him look quite a bit lighter. Now I feel he needs to be lighter. I want him to be more powerful like the one that I had up in the top up there. And so I will be doing that. But I think I'm going to bring in some more light and dark here. Some of the reeds, we're going to want to bring in some of the light and dark right along here into this edge here. The grasses and stuff that are going to be here. And some of the colors of the grasses across have to come back up over here. So we'll put those in. And normally this is what I do. And see how I like the scratching of this. Now, if you watch, those of you that have watched some of the Westerns, I use my other brush, which I thought, yeah, here it is. I use this brush. It's a horrible little brush. And I made this brush. I took a round. I took a big, basically bristle round, and I hammered it flat, and then I cut off certain things and let paint dry in it so it's nice and stiff. But I use it to drag through, and see, I can push in all kinds of like little light grasses and stuff like this, and I can give the feeling of grasses really easy with this, just pushing it around. Just pushing and pulling around like this, scratching through. You get all kinds of little different varieties of grasses, and it looks really, really good here, especially if you take your time and build it up and stuff. So, I may do this towards the end. I'll bring some of that in and stuff. I'm not completely sure because there's a lot of elements I want to put in here, so I'm not going to refine anything really well right now. I don't need to. What I'm looking for is patches and areas of color. Let's put a little more green right up here. Patches and areas of color that are going to help, set this whole feeling. Does that make sense? So and this is very important, I'm not looking at any detail, even though, and I stopped him before I got into too much detail. I don't want to get into too much detail. I want to keep my eye focused on color placements, a little bit of movement and stuff with the colors here. And that's what I want to do. So you can see him starting to come up here. Now, do you want to make those rocks and stuff that we had in here? And they're really quite easy to make. The underwater rocks. We'll start with some burnt sienna and some blue, a darker color, and we'll come in here. And this is where I want to vary it. But another color I use is with my Naphthol Red Light, which makes more of a gray. So you want these modeled down colors here like this, okay? And we'll let some of that burnt sienna, some of this blue, this nice dark blue. Sometimes I'll add a touch of green to it because that can come in. And what I want to do is just model around like this. Now you can see why we want to leave that kind of area in our painting. That helps so much. So we want to model around like this. Try not to make a repetitive mark, okay? Just kind of move it around. Let it diminish down up here as it goes back up this way. As it goes back up, the marks get smaller, lighter, softer. They get heavier down into here. And it's small, more transparent, less movement into it and stuff. And because they're going to be, the water itself is going to be not moving quite as much, and this is called linear perspective, and it's a good way to get perspective here. The rocks will be bigger here and smaller back here. So just move your brush, and let's add just a few of this movement back up over here. Boom, 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 boom. And when I do a real detail painting, I will do quite a bit of this. But what I'm setting up, what I'm looking at, is I'm peeling off the water and I'm looking at the rocks on the bottom of this little stream here. And so I'll push in a bit of that movement right in here. And we might put a bigger rock right in here anyway, but it just puts in that nice chunky movement. And very similar to what I did up on this one here. Now, what I do is I just take this over to the side. We'll take a little blue, a little light. We'll make a bit of a lighter gray. We don't want to make a huge gray. Maybe sometimes a little yellow in here. All these colors right in here are beautiful colors for rocks. Okay? And so what we want to do is we come in and we start to just make little ideas right into here of the rocks themselves here. And this is that I'm using a flat here. The actual best brush, if you want to create a lot of rocks like that, is a smaller little filbert, because it has a rounded little point on it. So it's actually a little better because you can round over some of your rocks here as you're putting them on, some of these marks. And you won't get those sharp angles that you do with the flat. So I come in here and I'll get different sizes, some of them piled up on top of each other. And so I start like that, and then I'll take a little lighter, change the tone a little bit of the gray color and stuff with that, and I'll hit the light side of it. And sometimes I do this. Sometimes if I have a lot of that movement, because I don't want, now you're thinking looking through the water, you don't want it to be super sharp edges at all. So I take that big, soft, dirty brush with that blue, and I just pull through a couple times like this, and I blur that off. Do you see? So I blur that off, and I'll redefine it again, a little more darks and lights and stuff, and I'll tap through here. And sometimes in real quick little paintings, I take my brush like this, my knife, and I'll put the rocks in, especially if I'm going to smaller areas. I'll put the ideas of the rocks in with my knife like this and touch them in. And sometimes I use a combination of both of them there, pushing in the light and the dark like that. But, it's like many times that I told you, and many, many times I've told you in a lot of the videos and stuff that I do, what I do, let's get a little bit more of my dark. When I finish something like that, or I get a nice movement, I come back and I reset my darks, because I draw with my darks. So what really makes them look like rocks down here is the darks, is the shadows of the dark. The underside and up one side and stuff here is the darks. So you do the darks a couple of times, the lights a couple of times, and this modeling of color here as you go through. And I can make some of the rocks look a little smaller, look a little lighter, a little smaller, a little different kinds of edges and stuff like this. And the thing is, the most important part about doing something like this is don't repeat your patterns. In other words, don't repeat the same thing over and over and over again. Change the colors out a little bit, just as you start to set in different rocks, light, small ones, big ones, pebbles, and stuff like that. And you'll work this over and over again several times, and it will slowly, as you do this again and again and again, it will slowly start to take on the look of more and more little rocks and pebbles and stuff like that on the bottom of the water. So I go back and forth between light and shadow, tapping around. I'm looking for variations of tones, so I get this modeling of all the tones and stuff as I come in here. And it takes a little bit of time, Like I say, you can do it quickly with a painting knife, but it's not quite as beautiful as if you use a filbert like this. And some people will, change their brush sizes and stuff like that when they do that. But, I find a little filbert and then, keeping an eye on my light's going to be coming up through here. So as you get finally with some of these rocks, like on the bottom, you're going to want to express that light source and vary the, which side of that rock that you're going to hit underneath there with that light, because light will travel through the water here and hit that rock as well. So, you'll give it its light plane like I've showed you before and doing that. Some of these just little taps and to get more of a gravel look to the rocks here, underneath. But that's how you're going to, and you can get some, especially those you beginners, you get nice looking rocks pretty easy. Don't forget to come back and hit some of those little shadow planes, and put some of those in. Put some bottom planes in there, like maybe a little more brown and stuff sometimes. Just go through here and put in a horizontal mark in between every once in a while like that. That helps give more of the feeling of the bottom. So pull horizontally. So it doesn't have to all be rocks. You can pull some horizontals here and give the feeling of just bottom, just stuff on the bottom here as well. Doesn't always have to be just rocks. And so that's how you start that. And I will fill up all of this up into here. Maybe some softer horizontals and stuff up here into this area, and then maybe a few taps of some small little bits here, more gravelly kind of rocks here, back up there, softer. But you see, it's the shadow. Find your light source coming here. So we're going to go lower right. It's the shadow that really makes them. And that's what I've discovered over a lot of years of painting, that it's the shadows that really, make stuff. And for so many years, I didn't paint as many shadows as I should have in my paintings. And, of course, now I do. Now, let's go back and let's start adding some of the other rocks, maybe some larger ones. So we'll go more burnt sienna and some blue and some white. Let's plan a few larger rocks, okay? And some of these rocks, larger rocks too, can come right up here onto the shoreline here. And I like, I like to, when I paint something like this, I like to vary the undulation of the ground and the rocks. So here I have my nice little filbert, and I'll put on a medium gray, then the light source, the light struck plane. Sometimes I start them all out with shadows. And see, I just that's my left brain. I kind of line those all up there. So let's make another one right in here. Make a bit of a rocky little point there, right there like that. And then before I put in some more light, let's get some of that shadow. And then you go through broken color, and I'll show that in a second, but we'll go underneath and back side. That will set the plane for that particular rock, okay? So model your brush, okay? Pull underneath and then down the right side, since the light is coming from the left here, and that'll start setting up the plane of your rock. And that's all it is. Rocks are just 3 planes, like I've showed you in so many other videos. They're the light struck plane, the receding plane, and the shadow plane. And so this is, I'm putting in the shadow plane. The receding plane, like you just saw me just take a couple strokes here, is I take a medium value and I'll pull the receding part of the plane. So when you look at that rock, you have a light, a receding, and a dark, which is the shadow. And I'll tap some of that receding color, sometimes around the other areas, and that will make the rock look a little different. And so I just kind of tap and push around, and you'll see different shapes and stuff like that start to happen there on that rock. And you can go back, and I'm going to probably put on some more light struck planes on some of this, and I'll vary it a little bit like this, and maybe some of the rocks will be more yellow green in there. They'll have a little different color in there, and so I'll vary that. But that's more work, and that gets into the detail of the rock, and I don't want to get that much in there, but I will be going there, because that is what makes nice rocks and stuff, is all those different little tones, what we call the broken color of that, which I've shown you in a lot of videos here on the channel. So you can look at those videos and get some great ideas. And I got to get a little more variety in the sizes of some of these too. So I'm going to tap around some smaller marks here so I can put in a few smaller rocks here as well, because you don't always want all your rocks the same size here. So we'll tap in, and I'll just use that rounded point of this little filbert, which does a great job on little rocks. Just that little point to start saying, okay, here's some smaller rocks. And we might bring that water in. There's there's great ways, and I'll show you this when we get to some of the detail. I want to do some of the detail with you, with everyone here, so that you can, because it's just great fun. But you take a violet, a deeper violet of the sky here, because you're thinking sky, you're thinking the water and sky. And you'll pull that in on the horizontal here, and see what that does is that brings the river, the water here, right up to the rock. Does that make sense? And what rocks have, which we'll do, but they'll have a little light edge to it from where the water hits them and stuff there. So that's how we're going to bring that. And I just love doing it. It's just most of this is just little brush tricks and stuff. Most of the painting is just that. Little brush tricks that you pick up along the way on your journey to becoming an artist. And that helps you, those little brush tricks help you, make something look a little bit more real. But we can have a edge. I can put a bit of water in there and take some of that out with some of that dark and soften that edge, and just a little bit of movement. So I'll put some of this movement right down in through all of this. But I'm going to paint some bigger rocks here too, because we should do some larger rocks, and just like what's on this particular one here. See, I like some of those other kinds of rocks that are right there, and you can just put some of that reference right up there. so we can paint some of those bigger rocks and see there's a, you know, like maybe a rock right out, maybe a rock right out here and a rock right out here, so we can get some movement right here, which would be right about in line where we want to take the viewer right here, so we can move the viewer sideways through the painting here and in towards our elk. So let's kind of plan that. So let's take a lighter gray and let's see what a rock would look like. Nice rounded, maybe a 2-part rock here, right in there. And maybe some smaller ones. You know, vary their sizes. That's the key to, and sizes and shapes. That's the key to a lot of interest and stuff within a painting here. And, you know, you can give the impression of some right back in here, some smaller ones or something like that. You know, do they stay there or not? You don't know. We don't know yet. But, you know, maybe it's coming out of this little rock area here that we have, and that's too much of a line right there. Did you see I did that? I did that on purpose so you can see what not to do. And then you know, I just start putting this in, because everything that we're painting here is what I call positive and negative. It's easy to paint out and change. You know, there was a time when I was a decorative painter that you had to be careful putting stuff in because you couldn't change it. But here with this types of techniques in painting, we can change anything at any time. It's really easy with Olaprema to change stuff, to change your mind and do other things, you know. So, and we can do that. Now, that might be too many, but you know me, I like to paint too many. I like to paint too many, take a look at it and go, nah, that doesn't work, and take it out. So let's put a little bit of the shadow in there. Okay, now, see, you got to visualize the rock shadow and the water shadow are going to come together in some areas here. So we'll push that in. And I'll just use a little extender in my brush, thin this out a little bit because it doesn't need to be, because we're going to do a lot with this. So see, I like to do this, push back and forth, and it destroys some of those edges. And I'll push some of that movement into the water here. And sometimes my paper towel right there like that, okay? And yeah, and those are just a little bit too much on a line. So maybe I take this one out. See, it's real easy to do as I put that in. See, and that breaks up the line of the rocks a little bit. Now, let's get that shadow plane in on the rock, which is so very important. That helps set that rock, the shape of that rock there. There's the shadow plane and the receding plane. So what I do is I just tap right along the bottom there a little bit and a little on the top here. And there's our afternoon train there. And we'll, yeah, push this in. Now, those trains are quite a bit of ways from us. It just shows you how loud they are. And the walls of the art center here are 1 foot thick of brick. So those are pretty loud trains. And they're several blocks away. But sometimes they feel like they're right outside, and I just love it. So now you can see that coming in here. And I might want to make some a little bit bigger. But you can see, and some of the things that make a rock really nice is they're going to get the reflection. It depends on how much movement's in the water. But they're going to get the reflection and colors down into the water. So especially right in here, you know, I would work several times on this rock. Maybe put in a nice broken color of some burnt sienna and yellow there. See, that just kind of really enhanced that rock. And, you know, restate some of that light coming around and down. You know, a little different there. And they, but you always preserve that light side plane, because these rocks with that light side plane really help you see where the light and shadow is into your painting, and helps you keep consistent with it as you're painting it here. So, and let's just make this. Let's just make this one, because I don't have one yet. Let's just make this a bigger one right here. and let it really come off this corner as a nice big rock. It's going to kind of hold our position there on that side of the painting there. In other words, the water's going to turn, and that big rock kind of always anchors the viewer's eye here. There we go. We'll come down like that, and we'll put some work into that guy right there. Let's put a little bit of that warmer burnt sienna along that bottom edge there. This is what I always say is the broken color. See, it just puts another color in there. Kind of hard to see because it's kind of small, but that's what I like to do. And I'll take some of that dark. This is where the important part of it comes, is that shadow. And maybe a bit more burnt sienna yellow into that shadow. So it's a little different than before. Here we go. That's a better color. The other one was just a bit too blue. And with a smaller rock, you can make some tonal problems. Let's just put it that way. You can have some problems with it because you can't see completely the tone. As you get bigger, you should try to be a little more careful because you see more of that, the actual rock there. You see more of the color. As the area of the color that you're using gets bigger, it's easier to see it. That truly, for those of you that study color theory, that's called the law of disproportionate color. As the area of the color gets bigger, the eye's ability to see the color becomes bigger, becomes better. That's why you go to the store and you get those little paint chips and you go, yeah, that's going to be a perfect color for my wall. Then you paint your wall and you go, that looks like a different color. And it's very true. It's because because the area of the color is bigger, your eye can see more things in the color now. So we'll work this rock a bit here. Maybe make it a little two-part rock here, right there. And work that shadow a bit and heavier. But now the painting is what I called it, light and shadow. See, the shadow's dark and the light. And then what I do is I just start working on more halftones through the painting. Halftones are, well, it's like a value, right? So if you have a shadow and you have a light, you're working the middle values in there, halfway between the shadow and the light, to add more interest. So I'll just come up here with some of this burnt sienna, some of this lighter gray. Now I'm down in a half value. It's not as light as the other value. And I just start adding the other colors in here like this, right in between. And I love the little filbert because I'll use it flat, I'll use the little point, and that's how you can start making it look jaggedy or anything like that, see? Sometimes I'll pull my knife in through something like that to make it look a little different, and there's all different kinds of ways that you can do that. Now, like this would be a good little spot. Maybe if I even move this rock over just a bit more right here, okay, this would be a good little spot to trail some water through and give a little bit of a ripple right down through here. We'll see. So I'll take some shadow, burnt sienna and blue. You can add a little red, add a little green. If I'm painting a big painting, I'll add some violets and stuff like that. Paint light and shadow, and then just take some of that with some of your white or your lighter gray, create a value right in between and start typing some of that. And if you feel like they're all the same gray, start adding some yellows and stuff like that to your grays here, and start making different gray greens and stuff like that, and touch those in and through and change the total colors and stuff of the rock. Get a little different color going on with it. And that's when they start to become really pretty. And of course, I have a long ways to go if I'm going to put in all of this stuff, but this is what's fun. This is kind of fun to sit down and take a lazy afternoon and just paint some of these different edges and look about light struck planes, the light coming through, how it's going to hit through that rock, and then that's where it gets really nice. Let's put a nice light struck plane right here. That'll help this rock really advance. Tap a bit of that through, okay? Maybe some of this plane right up here. But see, I can, like if I want to make a little jagged, like a second little rock, I just tap it a little bit. I can enhance that shadow or this down plane just by pulling down slightly. I can make that rock look like it's a two-part rock there, see? Your brush movement, so I can make this look like a down plane. See there, I can make it look really like a sharp plane if I keep that stroke soft, or if I use the the broken edge of it. I can just break that off a little bit and make it look completely different. That's what's the beautiful thing about it. Now, if I want, and I think I might, just put a little bit of a ripple that comes right down through here. We might have a little bit right in here, but let's put some of that down in. Let me show you. So I'll take a little bit of violet first, which is the real dark color of our sky. It's the deep, rich color. And, this is where you have to decide. Sometimes I dirty it up with burnt sienna or red or something, but I'll put violet. Now, this is the other thing, too. A lot of times when I do this, this is where I like the open medium. And I'll mix this in. So I have a little extender on the surface still. See, this is all still wet. Do you see that? Okay, so I can pick this right up. I'm not done there with it, so I can do that. So you can see it's all still wet, okay, with that extender. So now I'm going to take some of this violet with this open medium. This is what I like because it causes my brush to really slide in there. And this is the shadow of the water. So we'll push the shadow of the water here. And sometimes I will pull it down. And I'll use different brushes too, and knives. A lot of times if I'm painting water that I want it to be in the center of interest, I'll use my knife because the knife will leave more edges, and edges are very important. So see, I can pull through like this and get some of that water carrying down. I want to get that motion of it coming down through here. So we'll do a little bit of that here. The feeling of that motion coming down through. This is going to be, and we have to have that motion because this is going to, water is going to be moving it, and water has to be moving if we're going to do anything with, the lights and ripples and stuff like that. Now, if it gets too much, then you just take your bigger brush here, and you can pull down, see, and you can soften that movement underneath. And I look at that at my movement, and then I'll look at, do I need to soften that a little bit? But see, that puts that in there. Now, let me get back to my other, rinse this out. When you're painting with acrylics, you got to remember water is your solvent. So whenever I rinse that out real good, see, this will happen. Let me show you. If I leave water in here like this, and it'll cut right through my painting really quick. See that? Because water is the solvent. So, as with the watercolors, we add it to move the paint, to flow the paint. But with acrylics, that's your solvent. And if you're in a wet area, you don't always like to do that. Now, but sometimes I will, like if I know I have underneath this is this color. And so sometimes I will use, rather than putting light on top, I will use a little water in my brush and take out some of that shadow to create some of that extra movement that I might want to have through the water here. So I can do that. And this is what I would call negative painting. I'm actually physically taking off paint. But a lot of the times when I'm building something in a center of interest, I like to put paint on. So this time I'm going to take this water color, this color here, a little more, I like it slightly on the phthalo side. So I like it a little bit more blue-green when I do this. And I'm going to use it like this. Now, sometimes I use my knife. I'll show you that in just a minute, too. And I'm going to push some of this on just like that, and which is going to start the ripples of the water coming down through this whole area right in here. Okay, right in there like that. Now, that is, it's too much. You know me, I do too much. And so then what I do is I'll go back to a little darker phthalo, a little bit of that violet, put that in my brush, and I start taking it out and lifting it off letting that phthalo and stuff now come in as well as a different color, see? And I use all different kinds of techniques for painting water, and you'll see that. And through the videos over the years, I've learned all different kinds of techniques, and I like to show you all different kinds of techniques because there's a lot of them. And in my online class in the landscape, we paint some very detailed water reflections and water movements. These are quicker little techniques that get the idea right down right away. Then I'll come back, pick up a little bit of white. I know right where, like, you can even push a little bit of a curve right there, like it's coming right down through that area there. You can, or what I like to do is I'll take this brush and I'll push this through like that to create some of that water coming down through like that. And again, take out stuff that might be a bit too much, and sometimes I'll do this several times through the painting. You know, and I can always see this, that's your water. See that? So don't mix that up. Don't tap that too much. That's your water right there. That's pretty water. And so we just need to rotate our brush as we put that on, and we'll get some of that nice, pretty, those water, the colors of water and stuff like that coming through there. See, and that's what we want. Now, and if it's too light, which we'll judge after it starts to dry, if it's too light, then we'll take some of it out. But we'll maybe take some of that horizontally over here, right over some of our rocks. That's your light reflecting off of that. Right over some of our rocks, you see. And right up to this area, which is not done, but that doesn't look too bad, right up in there. And maybe a bit of shadow in there, just a touch. As you go back, the values of the water are going to compress to those violets back here, and we'll let that just flow right on down here. Now, where you get some of the really, really pretty water here, as you build this, and I'm going to do this quite a bit, guys, so because I want this to, but I'll start out with some of those violets here sideways like this. See how that just puts in a little bit of that, and then I'll come back as I go out of the violet. I go more blue-green, so more phthalo. Don't clean your brush, just pick up more phthalo, run that right in through here. And you can see some of those colors come off my brush a little differently. And I like the way those come off. Now, sometimes I'll work that again. Sometimes I just pull down and blur across to set those colors moving through here. And sometimes I leave them really harsh. It all depends on how much, how much movement I want in my water. And I try to vary that. Let's get a little more light, a little more edge of that coming through. Just the idea of little ripples here, there, through that. And I can put another little rock or something in there. This is my painting. I can decide it. So let's put a little darker violet. Put that in the brush. And just see, that's that high contrast between the light and dark, and I can leave that. I can just pull through, just lightly like that. I like that too, lightly through, and you'll see that. And this is up to you. Like along the water's edge here, of course, I'm going to do some reeds and stuff like that. But you can put a light ripple like this, and especially like take some of this light, tap it on your brush like this. Okay, now you gotta, like here, I want to be able to, when I paint, I like to roll down to this edge of the brush, the right side of the brush. So what I'm going to do is just load that right side of the brush right there with a little bit of that light. And now I can use the edge, and when I roll down, I'll make the mark. And when I roll up, the mark disappears. Do you see that? So as I come around the edge, I can roll down, I can roll up, I can roll down, I can roll up, roll down and roll up, and I can put the light little edge right along the water there. Isn't that cool? That only took me about 7 years to figure that out. So you guys are getting the benefit of all this time. So all these years I've been trying to figure some of this stuff out, because not too many teachers tell you all this stuff. And all the years that I was painting, and they're just like, oh, do this, and here, use your knife, do this, and they don't explain it all up. And so when I decided, I finally started to get comfortable doing this, I started explaining a little bit more. Now I'll just take a little medium blue and blue and stuff like that and take out what I don't think I need. But now look at this. See, I put that blue on, and now look at how much darker my rocks appear. And that's what's going to happen, when we go in and we put this. It's called simultaneous contrast. And this is why you always go back, and maybe you have to go back. Let's put a little yellow into some of this, and yellow, maybe a touch of green, a little bit of this blue. Beautiful gray colors. So when I go back, I'll use a different kind of gray. So let's put a little bit of this in and push. That's beautiful, because that's the color of the elk there coming across to that rock. And let's light this up a bit more. And acrylics are going to dry a value darker. We know that. So let's maybe relieve that right there for right now. It looks a little light, but it's probably going to dry down till it looks like we know what we're doing. So, I always tend it's gonna dry down. So I'm value-wise, I'm right at, you put it on your scale, I'm right at a 9, which I know is probably going to be the right color here, what I want on these rocks here for the values and stuff here. But you can see quite quickly, and let's go blues and some of these burnt siennas, get some of those other mid-planes there on these rocks. Get some of those other colors in there, see? But you can see, you can get a lot of interest there with those rocks by putting that on. Let's build this one up a little higher. That's kind of nice. Right there, let's put a bit more of a shadow, kind of, maybe right here. Pull that, let that little burnt sienna come off. That was a little different color. And just leave that. Let's lighten up. So see, as I get into these rocks, I'll tap in more color. And when I get into a really complex painting with a lot of rocks, I'll change brushes up. Maybe I'll do some with a bristle filbert, so it looks a little different. Maybe I, touch in with the edge of my palette knife, so I'll make the rocks more complex. Here, we don't want them to be too complex, and the reason why is because I have my elk. And so, I want to have a little bit of nice interest and stuff like that here to the rocks, but I don't want to, overwhelm or take away from the elk here. So let's put a little see, just like that. I like that, little hits like that. So we'll do this. And you'll see me do this a lot through the painting here. And like I say, I'm going to work on this painting a little more than what some of you have seen me do on other paintings. And I thought, I have a person that's interested in this painting, and very good customer. So I put some time into this for their collection. And if not, I'll keep it. Or I just might keep it anyway. But, there's paintings that I paint fast, and I love the fast looseness of a painting, like the florals. I love to paint them fast and loose, and I love that casual brushwork. It's just a power that comes to it. And then there's other paintings like this I'm going to put a little bit more into. So I paint different looks, different feelings and stuff. And, that's where I find the pure joy of the artist, that sometimes I paint real quick stuff, and sometimes I paint a little bit more detail, and they're just fun to sit down on a day that right now it's too hot to go outside. It's over 100 outside, and I am just going to sit in here in the nice air conditioning and paint here. And There we go. And add some of those different looks. And I might want to put some darker, deeper shadows. And, you know, they become more blurry, like I, you know, put some of this in and around right in here. And they'll become more blurry and all that kind of stuff as the water gets deeper. So all you do is you just kind of move that out and let that get blurry over there, you see? So, but it puts a tremendous amount of interest into here. So, you know, maybe as I come off to this other area over here, you know, I might just take, this is where I really like the open medium. And I'll take this lighter color here, maybe a bit more blue into this. And see, and you'll see me on other paintings do this. And this is where I use my knife just to kind of push it through like that to create some of that movement that's coming back down. Now, I can, that's a bit too much of a line for me, and so I'm going to pull this down and really soften off this reflection here just a bit there like that. So it takes it from movement to more of a reflection, if that makes sense. Let's just blur that in. And I just love to use my finger for some of this. And see, that open medium is still wet, and it is very much, see how I can just move the color a little bit. I don't want to move it very much, because the more you move, remember, the more you do it, the more the possibilities you're taking away from it, right? And so you don't want to do too much, you know, along there. Let's get this a little bit more blue. Maybe a little bit more blue, and just put a mark or two on this side. That's all it really needs to get a little bit of the reflection of the water over there. There's all kinds of ways, though, to do water. I've showed you ways to do perfect reflections and ways that you can just pick up a little bit of the water coming through here, right into some of this. You know, right in and down through here and stuff. So, but I'll do this a couple times. And yes, you can. Like you say, oh, well, how do you do that? Well, you just model more rocks back over it and do it again. You know, we're not doing, I'm going to take up my 1 inch, maybe even, well, I won't. I'll take that out. Make it look like I know what I'm doing here. Take that green out of there. Put some extender in my brush. I don't want to use water because I'll cut through it. So extender, but see, extender doesn't. Extender will help me blur through this and create that mark, that interest, that movement without cutting through it like water will do. So I'll take a bit of this. Let's just blur through a bit. Just a bit of the movement here. Right up over our rocks, maybe pull down a bit, and see, it just creates that little glazing movement of the water there. And you'll have highs and lows of water and rocks, and it just looks amazing, okay? So anyway, that's, and and now what I have some of this, I can see, so you go, wow, that does, it's nice, maybe takes away from the elk. But what you've got to understand is we're going to come back onto the elk. So my next step would be come back up onto this elk. Every time I do something major within a painting, I'll return back to work on the story, the center of interest of the painting, which in this case is the elk. So a little bit of my burnt sienna and green over here. Those are good elk colors. A bit of yellow as I go to the light, and some whites here. And let's get some of that forward. And see, I'm not matching the color I did before. I'm changing it. So, and I'll use a little bit different mark structure than I did before here. Let's take just a bit of shadow right here to help get that rounding plane, the form of the elk. So light into shadow there, okay? And I do want to get that real big muscle right here, right up next to that shadow line, that cast shadow line of his shoulder, right? Maybe just a bit darker right up here. We'll keep that in. A little bit more, a little bit darker. And some of that right up through here. That's pretty good. Maybe some of the yellow, burnt sienna, and a little bit of that greenish over here. We'll head over to the shadow side here, and sometimes go a little bit more yellow over here. So we'll break up a bit. Don't do too many marks. You know, don't destroy. In other words, stop painting. Does that make sense? Stop painting. Just a couple marks and get out, you know. And so here, a little bit of green in it. I'll just put that little mark. Let's change the tone a bit. And let's just drop that one in on that side. So we're looking for that muscle, the shape of that muscle that's going to be building right up and through there. So maybe a bit more yellow with that right in here. Let's build that muscle there. And some of the downward light stroke here. Downward, that gets the plane there. Now you can see that combination of those marks, see, starts to get a lot of interest onto him there. And now I'll start to think about that lightest little mark that is going to come. That one wasn't quite light enough. Maybe a bit of yellow as I get lighter. Remember I mentioned that. As I get lighter, I like a little more yellow. Right in there like that. So now you can see that built up. But if I feel I need a little more form, I'll go back slightly darker and just put a little more form into that muscle there. That's and maybe a value or two right there. So that's looking pretty good right there on that part of him. And then I'll carry some of these colors, carry them right up here. And I love to leave the brushwork, the calligraphy, because that gives him the interest that I'm looking for. And I want to, this edge is a little bit harsh, so I want to break the edge here. Break that edge so that that cast shadow is not quite as distinct. Remember that cast shadow is a kind of a violet. It's a little bit green and burnt sienna and violet here. And then we lighten it up just a bit here. And just a touch more violet. Lighten it up just a bit. Not exactly the same color. So it could go just a touch lighter here. There we go. That's a nice grade. Work that down here. Vary that color right there. That's kind of neat. A neat color. And I'll restate some of these other colors through here. The burnt sienna, blue, and some green. Darker tones, colors here. Working through that, take some of that violet right on that edge. So I'll paint those edges again. See, I'll just leave that mark. See the color interest that's coming there from that? Let's go back with that lighter yellow and light and push that in right in here because I like that light through on that. Take some of that shadow right up next to it. Break the edge just a bit. And that gives just such a nice, it's a nice little pull of light right there, but it's a little harsh. So I'll just soften that out with another stroke. There. Maybe a touch more light. So it's a building process, guys, and it's a lot of fun. And I'll come back probably and work on that water and stuff again. But I'll put a little bit more through here. And then some of you asked to see the mountains. I'll change the mountains with you. So we'll do another video, show you how I'm working some of this stuff. And I want to show you how I'm going to go about painting the trees and stuff like that as we go in here and do some of this stuff, okay? So I hope you've enjoyed, just taking you along a commissioned landscape that I'm doing here. And then I also am going to do more in here. So I got a lot more to do. But I'll film some of it so you guys can see it, okay? And then we'll get back into some of our other studies as well. We'll do those along the way as well, okay? Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.